A good evening, this is Tinnitus the Human, and welcome to my top tips for Rome Total War's Barbarian Invasion. We've already looked at the top tips for the campaign map. I'll put a link to that at the top of your screen now, but today we focus on the battlefield. Yes, 20 years on from the game's release, you'd think this topic would be redundant, but here we are. So I should point out before we begin that all the tips are relevant for both the original and the remaster, but I tend to play the original, so most of my footage will be from the 20-year-old vintage. Now, on with the list. Number 1. Night Battles. Barbarian Invasion introduced the cinematic joy of night battles. Dark blue skies, a shining moon, and all the flaming arrows your heart could desire. Whilst the darkness was toned down, or toned up as it were, in Medieval 2, these battles offer more than just aesthetics. Night battles allow you to exclude reinforcements from captains and generals who lack the night fighter trait. This trait is given to generals with 4 command or higher, or if you win when defending a night battle. As a silly side note, in the files, the trigger for this trait is amusingly called a diet of carrots. There is the noctophobia and the noctophilia traits for those who do particularly badly or particularly well, respectively, and these impact your command abilities in those battles, though those who have the noctophobia do gain personal security as the trait intensifies, so that's something. More to the point, it can be incredibly helpful when sneaking into a city or to avoid facing hordes of enemies in one go. In Medieval 2, you'll notice that the Mongols and Timurid generals pretty much all have night fighter traits, presumably to reduce the player's ability to use night battles to whittle down the hordes. Not here though, it's a little bit more organic as hordes will pop up all over the place and throughout the game, and with luck you can use this battle feature to your tactical advantage, although sometimes I just do it for the pretty views. It is indeed pretty, and actually you do gain one command, so arguably you should always pick a night battle. Number 2. Swimming. This feature is mostly seen on bridge battles whereby lighter units are able to cross the water by swimming rather than simply running across the bridges or fording shallow spots in the river. Quick trivia questions actually. Which are the swimming units in Rome's base game? And aside from bridge battles, where do you see swimming units in Barbarian Invasion? Answers at the end of the video. Look out for the can swim attribute of your units and utilise these in river crossings. Admittedly, most players will be defending bridges rather than attacking, and the main impact here is that it reduces your opportunity to bridge troll the AI. Swimming units tend to have low defence and are slow and vulnerable when crossing, but their ability does mean you need to defend rivers more widely, and thus it does act as a nice balance. Personally, I tend to thinly spread a couple units on the riverbanks to protect against this, and as the swimmers are weaker units, potentially tired and probably full of arrows, they tend to make little traction. However, don't underestimate how much they can distract you from the bridge and potentially how much they may be interrupting your archers from raining death on the crossing. If you're not careful, a breach on the flank can pose a disaster to defence of the river crossing, or alternatively, you may have left the bridge too weakly guarded in defending against the swimmers. Ultimately, a nice balance is reached here. But unlike in most new features of Barbarian Invasion, this one was not included in Medieval 2. The main reason I assume is that it can actually be incredibly buggy, with units refusing to use the bridge because they can actually swim, meaning that many units will chase down units by swimming. Swimming also reduces stamina quickly, and they will drown if they are exhausted, which happens far too often. Light cavalry are ideal to chase down routing units, but when they choose to swim, you basically let the enemy escape. This is a quite infuriating aspect from an otherwise fun feature. Number 3. Prevalence of Armour. Units in Barbarian Invasion tend to have much higher defense stats, with armour being far more prevalent. Limitani are terrible, effectively equivalent to Town Watch, but even their defense is up at 17. For comparison, the Comitatense's attack is only 8, so units can take a lot longer to land their damage, so do expect less instant routes in Barbarian Invasion. Indeed, Barbarian Invasion was a testing ground for ideas like the Hordes, religion and longer battles for Medieval 2, and so recalibrating your tactics for high defences is important. Indeed, basic archers can really struggle compared to in Rome's base game. With all that extra armour, do pay close attention to any units with armour piercing. Aside from the slingers still floating around for the Celts and Sassanids, do consider the new early crossbowmen, the Bucellarii, available as mercenaries but also to the Western Romans, the Romano-British and the Celts. They are short range and do like a direct shot, but if you can find the right situation for them, like a bridge or wall defence, They will do excellent work against armour. Barbarian factions pretty much all have a lot of armour-piercing axe infantry like the Golden Band, adding a high morale of 13, and they can be a menace, but the most fun are those Franziska Hirleban, the hilarious axe throwers, whose projectile axes are listed as causing thrown armour-piercing damage. On this note, a lot more basic barbarian units like Levy Spearmen now have missiles to throw before combat. Even Berber Hillmen have a missile attack of 11 and can catch you out, so when playing as the Romans, beware that lost advantage. Elsewhere, the Sassanids have the chunky Sugdian warriors, and many factions now have the fearsome Berserkers, Hounds of Coulon for the Celts, and the Lombard Berserkers for the Alemanni, Burgundii and the Lombardi. These boys need no introduction. The best though is the Carriage Ballista. They are chaos on toast. Skirmishers that rip apart the enemy with disgusting levels of mobility and efficiency. They are spectacularly vulnerable to missiles and completely unwieldy to manoeuvre, but they are the most fun to be had in the game. They're only available to the Western Romans, so do not miss out on them. Number 4, formations. Sadly, the days of Rome's Doom Phalanx formation were over, but there were new alternatives for you to utilise. The Schiltrum, which is used by a variety of barbarian and nomad spearmen, is almost impervious to cavalry and will fend off infantry for a good amount of time. Useful when isolated out in the field, and particularly for clogging city streets or gateways. It is a static formation and is vulnerable to missiles, but it allows you to get good change out of some otherwise basic infantry. The shield wall though is much closer to the phalanx. It is a tight formation that would not inflict the same horse melting properties of the phalanx, but it will hold for a long time. A number of units from basic barbarian levy spearmen to horde chosen swordsmen to the mighty auxilia palatina can utilise it. These formations will hold well and are excellent rebalancing of what was an otherwise OP phalanx in the base game. Number 5, walls are your friends, and much more than before. As discussed in my top tips for the campaign map video, not only do walls give happiness and are available to the barbarians now, if not the hordes, they are also very helpful against the hordes. Firstly, it will delay them, allowing you to bring reinforcements. Secondly, as these factions lack siege weapons and only a few ballistas are available as mercs in the east, they can suffer huge losses when taking a city. Thirdly, their army's strengths are in their cavalry. You will easily repel the likes of runaway spearmen, so if you can hold the walls against a limited number of decent infantry, they will have to rely on their horses. These can be restricted in the streets by spearmen and the aforementioned shield walls and schiltrum. Investing in stone walls will help minimise any damage from the hordes should they assault your city. Back to our trivia questions, and I hope you have your answers ready. In Rome Total War, you can see dogs swimming across the rivers on occasion, although not their handlers to my knowledge. I have tried the pigs too, and these are spectacularly funny. Whether on fire or not, the pigs can swim. Unfortunately though, the fire is not put out by the river, and thus the pigs will almost certainly die before crossing, leaving us with soggy bacon floating downstream. Even the dogs are too sad to nibble at our fallen friends. Still, the non-flaming piggies can totally make it up the riverbank and onward to chase down the enemy. And as for the second part of trivia, in Barbarian Invasion you may sometimes see units enter the battlefield near a lake or pond, and units will swim if they need to. In this example, the unit could swim. I don't actually have footage for a non-swimming example though, so I guess they would be unable to enter the battlefield if they couldn't swim. Anyone with an example in the comments, I'd love to hear it. That is all for now. If you've enjoyed this video, then do please like it and subscribe to the channel if you so wish. I also run a membership here and on Patreon should you want to support the channel further. On which note, a big thank you to all of my supporters, many of whom will appear in the video's end card. Thank you so much. And do add any more tips that you have in the comments down below, and do check out some of our other videos in the description for more Barbarian Invasion content. But for now, I will leave you. I'm Tenez the Human, and this has been my top tips for Rome Total War's Barbarian Invasion, the Battlefield Edition. Thank you, friends, and tally-ho. Send in the camels, those shiny, smelly camels. Oh, the anarchy loosed upon the world, apart from over here where we're kind of routed. Stupidity got us into this mess. Stupidity will get us out of it, damn it. We will have a last stand at some point. But it's not today!